We're back now with a look at the drop in the number of international tourists who are visiting the United States this year.
Some Dutchmen say, why are you going? You're going to Trump?
And what are they saying when they cancel?
They don't feel safe, they don't feel welcome.
Travel to the U.S. right now, do you feel like your friends and family feel comfortable traveling there?
No. Nobody I know back in England or here would go to the US at the moment.
This isn't another pandemic, and it certainly isn't 2020. It's the summer of 2025, and yet America's airports are beginning to feel strangely quiet. At first glance, there's no obvious cause, no health crisis, no new travel restrictions, no global emergency. But something has clearly shifted. On international flights arriving at major hubs like JFK, entire rows sit empty. Terminal walkways that once buzzed with travelers from around the world now echo with the quiet hum of janitorial carts and delayed boarding calls. The contrast is striking, especially when compared to the packed crowds and long wait times that defined the post-pandemic recovery period just a couple of years ago. According to official data, only 4.541 million non-U.S. citizens arrived in the United States during the first quarter of 2025, a 9.7% drop from the same period last year. That's nearly 500,000 international visitors who simply didn't come. And yet, this significant shift has happened with barely a mention in the headlines. There was no dramatic announcement, no single event to point to. Tourists from Canada, the UK, Europe, and Asia weren't blocked at the border or discouraged by sudden policy changes. They just quietly canceled their trips. This isn't just a downturn in tourism. It may reflect a broader decline in how the world perceives the U.S. Not through protests or criticism, but through something far more telling: absence. When travelers no longer feel compelled to visit, when even familiar destinations lose their appeal, it suggests a quiet erosion of connection, comfort, and trust. So, what exactly is happening at America's biggest airports? And why are once bustling gateways from New York to Los Angeles now struggling to stay busy? What's happening to American airports isn't isolated. It's unfolding across the country, revealing a broader pattern. Even the most iconic travel hubs, long symbols of movement, exchange, and opportunity, are slowly growing quieter. At New York's JFK, one of the most recognizable international gateways, the decline is subtle but steady. International arrivals are estimated to be down between 5 and 10%, and although JFK still ranks among the busiest airports in the U.S., its total traffic is hovering only slightly above pre-pandemic levels. In a city where tourism fuels thousands of small businesses, museums, and theaters, this change matters. With more than 3 million fewer visitors projected in 2025, New York stands to lose as much as $25 billion in tourism revenue, a blow that's already being felt across hospitality and retail sectors. Further west, Los Angeles International Airport, LAX, is experiencing a similar shift. Once a fixture in the world's top 10 busiest airports, it has slipped from the rankings altogether. One of the steepest declines comes from Canada, where travel to California has fallen by as much as 70%, while domestic travel through LAX dropped by 4% in April, contributing to a countywide decrease. These aren't just statistics, they reflect a change in perception. Tourists now cite not only high costs, but also anxiety around public safety. As one Canadian traveler put it, "I don't want to pay to feel anxious." In Orlando, the home of Disney World and a longtime magnet for families, the downturn is tied to affordability. With airfare up 45% and hotel prices nearly doubling, what used to be a once-in-a-lifetime childhood experience has become financially out of reach for many. A mother from Texas shared that she told her son Disney was under renovation not because it was closed, but because the trip was simply too expensive to make. The slowdown isn't limited to the East and West coasts. In Las Vegas, where airports, casinos, and entertainment are tightly interlinked, the cracks are showing. At Harry Reid International, traffic has thinned, and with it, the pulse of the city. Casinos have reported more than a 5% decline in revenue. Bars and restaurants are closing early. The vibrant energy that once defined the Strip feels diminished. One visitor from Vancouver summed it up, "Vegas used to make me feel free. This year it just doesn't feel the same." Even inland, the effects are clear. Denver International Airport, a vital domestic connector, has seen passenger numbers fall for 3 consecutive quarters. There's been no major disruption or disaster, just a growing reluctance among Americans to fly. Rising ticket prices, frequent delays, and poor service have led many to choose the highway over the runway, with trust in air travel steadily eroding.
When traveling across the country, there are a lot of different airlines and things like that. And there's a lot of different prices. It's expensive as fuck. Let's just say that.
It's like, I don't feel safe. Like, I truly do not feel safe there. And if I were to be safe there when I was traveling, it would be because of privilege, and that makes me feel sick.
Taken together, these shifts at JFK, LAX, Orlando, Las Vegas, and Denver reveal more than just declining numbers. They reflect a deeper unease. What once felt like seamless, exciting movement now feels uncertain, expensive, and at times uninviting. America's airports, once among its proudest symbols of openness and ambition, are becoming quieter, not because of force or fear, but because the world and its own people are slowly stepping away. The quiet emptiness spreading through America's airports isn't just a matter of schedules or staffing. As we saw in New York, Los Angeles, and Las Vegas, people aren't just missing flights, they're stepping away from something they no longer feel part of. Behind every canceled trip is a personal decision, and increasingly those decisions are driven by more than convenience. For many international travelers, the idea of visiting the United States has started to feel less inviting and more complicated. A growing number are rethinking their plans not because of logistics, but because something in the country's atmosphere has changed. Part of that shift comes from the political tone emerging in recent months. Statements and policies from figures like former President Donald Trump, especially around immigration, international alliances, and border control, have contributed to a sense of tension. While these messages are often directed at domestic audiences, they're heard loudly overseas. And for many potential visitors, they raise a simple but unsettling question. Am I really welcome? Rising costs have also reshaped the decision. Domestic airfare has climbed by an average of 26%, while service quality has declined. Delays, overcrowding, and inconsistent experiences have made flying feel like more of a burden than a joy. When travelers compare the experience and the price tag to what other countries offer, the US no longer feels like an easy choice. Then there's safety. Travel advisories from Canada, several European governments, and parts of Asia now caution their citizens about potential risks in the US, citing everything from gun violence to political unrest. Even if the risk is small, the psychological impact is real. For families traveling with children or couples looking for a relaxing escape, that sense of unease can be enough to change plans entirely. Visa access adds another layer of difficulty. Tourists from Europe and Asia increasingly report delays, interviews, and rejections that make the US process feel more restrictive than elsewhere. In contrast, countries like Canada or Australia are seen as more accessible, more predictable, and crucially more welcoming. But the most profound shift may be emotional. The US once represented a kind of open-door optimism, a country that welcomed visitors with enthusiasm, opportunity, and cultural generosity. Now that sense of welcome feels muted. More than a few travelers say, it's not just harder to get in, it's harder to feel like you belong. America used to feel like a place that welcomed the world. Now it feels like it's closing the door. What's happening isn't sudden, and it's not about a single factor. It's a slow, layered unraveling of trust, of connection, and of the belief that America is still the destination it once was. As the United States quietly loses ground in global tourism, its closest neighbors are moving quickly to fill the space. Canada and Mexico, two countries long overshadowed by the US in travel and hospitality, are now emerging as more attractive, more reliable alternatives. In Canada, international tourism is not just recovering, it's accelerating. New international routes have been launched out of cities like Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal, offering travelers more direct connections to Europe, Asia, and Latin America. The airports are investing in efficiency and safety, and the experience is drawing in the very visitors the US seems to be losing. For many tourists, Canada offers what the US once promised: a stable, welcoming, and well-organized entry point to North America. Meanwhile, Mexico is becoming the default destination for travelers seeking affordability, warmth, and ease. With lower costs, looser entry requirements, and fewer safety concerns related to mass shootings or political protests, it's now one of the top choices for international vacations, especially among Canadians and Europeans. Even travelers from the US itself are opting for destinations like Cancun, Mexico City, and Tulum, where they report a greater sense of value and less friction throughout the trip. What we're witnessing isn't just a temporary shift in travel preferences. It's a quiet rebalancing of the North American travel map, one where the US is no longer the default choice, and where its neighbors are quickly stepping into the space it's leaving behind. There was a time when American airports weren't just transit hubs, they were symbols of national identity. JFK represented the spirit of New York. LAX embodied the imagination of California. Orlando welcomed the world to childhood dreams. And Las Vegas promised escape, freedom, and energy. If even New York and Los Angeles are struggling to hold on to their international presence, what does that say about the rest of the country? If travelers are skipping Las Vegas and Disney World, what does that mean for America's image, not just as a destination, but as an idea? For decades, the United States positioned itself as the place the world wanted to visit, to experience, to remember. But now, the quiet at its airports suggests something else, a shift in perception. When international travelers quietly stop coming, when global conferences find new homes, and when even American families begin choosing cars over planes, the message becomes harder to ignore. Across the U.S., even Americans are pulling back from air travel from once-loved destinations, from the belief that the system still works the way it used to. So the question now isn't just whether the world will come back, it's whether America is ready to ask why it left. Is this a temporary pause, just another dip in the cycle? Or is it the start of something deeper, a long goodbye to the role the country once played on the global stage? Have you felt less excited about visiting or even traveling within the U.S.? Have you canceled a trip recently, and if so, what changed your mind? Like, share, and subscribe if you want to keep exploring the deeper forces. Shaping America's global image, one airport, one city, and one quiet signal at a time.